So it's Sunday, and for you, I have something lighter. Usually on a Sunday, I try to give you something to reflect upon in the faith or something lighter to help you with rest, basically. And I think we have the latter today, though it is still informative. It's from Chesterton, and Chesterton is always thought provoking. So the first piece is a classic short essay of his on modern art. You can imagine what he has to say about modern art. And the second is inspired by the talk I had with my co host over at Rights and Duties, and that is Chesterton's short defense of cheap fiction. He calls fiction essential and dismisses most of the what we can kind of consider essential items as luxury goods. It's an interesting and thought provoking piece, and I hope you enjoy it this Sunday. Are the Artists Losing It? By G.K. Chesterton. Merely to wish for advanced art is not anarchism, it is simply snobbishness, and snobbishness more vulgar than the vulgarest worship of rank and wealth. For after all, there is at least a low sort of sincerity in that sort of snobbery. Rich people can give their sycophants solid pleasure of a sort, for which they can be thanked without falsehood. And it is a shade more honest for men to praise a patron for the champagne and cigars they do enjoy than for the pictures and statues they only pretend to enjoy. But as these great changes in art are never patronized by anybody except the very rich, we shall be relieved to hear that the two different types of snobbishness can generally be practiced at the same dinner table. Anyhow, the fashion in these things is almost always some form or other of intellectual cowardice, and many eminent persons say, a very interesting experiment, or an attempt to approach life from a new angle, when, if they were moved suddenly to candor, they would look at one another and say, have all the artists lost it? In one respect, at least, the artists are really to blame. The real weakness of the best of the new primitives is that their quaintness does not arise out of a universal world of wonder, but rather out of a world without wonder. It comes not from simplicity, but from satiety. The shepherds who watched the first sketches of Giotto were surprised that he could draw a face, and therefore still more surprised that he could draw a beautiful face. But the modern Giotto is tired of beautiful faces, and feels that there might be yet a surprise in the drawing of ugly faces. To judge by some of the society beauties he paints, we might say that he is trying to frighten himself. And there would be this degree of serious truth in it, that this typical sort of modern artist, whatever else he is primarily a self-tormentor. At the best, he is pinching himself to see if he is awake, not having about him the real white daylight of wonder to keep him wide awake. At the worst, he is sticking pins all over himself to find the one live spot, as the witch-finders of a livelier age did it to find the one dead spot. I am not sure that even the old picture of the live people brought to passing is more horrible than the new picture of such past people brought to life. Anyhow, it is surely obvious that there is no permanent progress that way, that we cannot really be rejuvenated by becoming more and more jaded, or making mere insensibility a spur to sensations. Still less, of course, do we so come any nearer to our problem of the revival of popular art. If the public does not always enter into the feelings of geniuses, at least it cannot be asked to enter into all the feelings of those who've lost it, or men whose methods are as individual and isolated as the maniacs of an asylum. The real solution does not lie that way, but exactly the opposite way. It does not lie in the increasing the number of artists who can startle us with complex things, but by increasing the number of people who can be startled by common things. It lies in restoring relish and receptivity to human society, and that is another question, and a more important one. It is enough to say here that it is not only means making more Giottos, but also making more shepherds. It might be put defiantly by saying that the great modern need is to uneducate the people. I do not merely mean to uneducate the populace, I mean more especially uneducate the educated. It might be put much more truly by saying, as we have to say at the end of so many entirely rationalistic inquiries, that what the modern world wants is religion, or something that will create a certain ultimate spirit of humility, of enthusiasm, and of thanks. It is not even to be done merely by educating the people in the artistic virtues of insight and selection. It is to be done much more by educating the artists in the popular virtues of astonishment and enjoyment. It is not to be achieved by the artist leaving the crowd further and further behind in his wild goose chase, nor even by the crowd running hard enough to keep up with the artist, but rather by the artist turning around and looking at the crowd, in realizing that it is rather more interesting than a whole flock of wild geese. A Defense of Penny Dreadfuls by G.K. Chesterton. One of the strangest examples of the degree to which ordinary life is undervalued is the example of popular literature, the vast mass of which we contentedly describe as vulgar. The boy's novelette may be ignorant in a literary sense, which is only like saying that a modern novel is ignorant in the chemical sense, or the economic sense, or the astronomical sense, but it is not vulgar intrinsically. It is the actual center of a million flaming imaginations. The simple need for some kind of ideal world in which fictitious persons play an unhampered part is infinitely deeper and older than the rules of good art, and much more important. Every one of us in childhood has constructed such an invisible dramatis personae, but it never occurred to our nurses to correct the composition by careful comparison with Balzac. In the East, the professional storyteller goes from village to village with a small carpet, and I wish sincerely that anyone had the moral courage to spread that carpet and sit on it in Ludgate Circus. But it is not probable that all the tales of the carpet-bearer are little gems of original artistic workmanship. Literature and fiction are two entirely different things. Literature is a luxury. Fiction is a necessity. A work of art can hardly be too short, for its climax is its merit. A story can never be too long, for its conclusion is merely to be deplored, like the halfpenny or the last pipe light. And so, while the increase of the artistic conscience tends in more ambitious works to brevity and impressionism, voluminous industry still marks the producer of the true romantic trash. There was no end to the ballads of Robin Hood. There is no end to the volumes about Dick Deadshot and the Avenging Nine. These two heroes are deliberately conceived as immortal. It is the modern literature of the educated, not the uneducated, which is avowedly and aggressively criminal. Books recommending profligacy and pessimism, at which the high-souled errand boy would shudder, lie upon all our drawing-room tables. If the dirtiest old owner of the dirtiest old bookstall in Whitechapel dared to display works really recommending concupiscence or checking out, his stock would be seized. These things are our luxuries, and with a hypocrisy so ludicrous as to be almost unparalleled in history, we rate the gutter boys for their immorality at the very time that we are discussing, with equivocal German professors, whether morality is valid at all. At the very instant that we curse the penny dreadful for encouraging thefts upon property, we canvass the proposition that all property is theft. At the very instant we accuse it, quite unjustly, of lubricity and indecency, we are cheerfully reading the philosophies which glory in lubricity and indecency. At the very instant that we charge it with encouraging the young to end life, we are placidly discussing whether life is worth preserving. But it is we who are the morbid exceptions. It is we who are the criminal class. This should be our great comfort. The vast mass of humanity, with their vast mass of idle books and idle words, have never doubted and never will doubt that courage is splendid, that fidelity is noble, that distressed ladies should be rescued, and vanquished enemies spared.